Hi class, I'm glad you're watching this video. I'm sorry I can't be there with you today, but I hope that this video will work in the interim for class today, Wednesday, August 29th. Let's get started. You can see here my intro slide. Like usual, it has the 3 units we're covering this semester: Think, Plan, Do. And today what we're covering is capitalism, which is in the Think Like an Entrepreneur unit. So to cover this topic, we're first going to talk about different types of economic systems other than capitalism, then some key characteristics of capitalism, and then I'll put up your to-do list. I do have an article that you need to read before class on Friday, August 31st, and then some other reminders of things you all have ongoing right now. All right, so before we talk about economic systems, we need to go over this definition, which is the wealth and resources of a country or region in terms of production and consumption of goods. Now I paused here because as you think about this definition, maybe you're already filling it in. There's obviously been some clues as well in the previous slides as to what this would be, but this is the economy that we're talking about. The economy really dictates the wealth and the resources, how they're used within a country or region. That is called the economy. Okay, so here's the definition, the baseline where we're all working from. Just like before we started talking further about entrepreneurship, we defined what definition we're using for an entrepreneur before we can move forward. So this is the definition of economy that we're using. And I want to cover the economic questions. Now I have 4 economic questions, and you may have had previous classes where there were 3 economic questions or there were 5 economic questions. So there's different variations. These 4 are pretty common and I think make a lot of sense when you're looking at the economy itself. The first one is what should be produced, and this is talking about goods and services. So what goods and services should be produced? How will it be produced? What will be produced? How will it be produced? For whom will it be produced? So who gets those goods and services? And then finally, who owns and controls the factors of production? So sometimes, like I said, you may just see the first 3. Those first 3 economic questions are pretty consistent. The 4th one I think is important, especially when we're moving on to talk about capitalism, because ownership and control, who has that, is really key to the 2 different types of economic systems. So the answers to these questions, these are answered in every country or region. So by the individuals that live there, the families, the businesses, the government, how these questions are answered in regards to goods and services determines what type of economy you have. All right, so the 2 major types of economic systems are capitalism and socialism. So on one side here we have capitalism, the principles of which were outlined by Adam Smith, which many of you have probably heard of, 1700s Scottish philosopher, and he outlined here as far as government ownership, or government involvement, ownership, profits, incentive, and pay. So government involvement, when you're talking about capitalism, ideally is none. All right, so other words that are really used interchangeably with capitalism are free market or free enterprise. So that free referring to government not being involved in regard to how those economic questions are answered: the what, the how, the for whom, and the ownership and control. Ownership is private. All right, so this is key, meaning individuals, private ownership, not just government ownership, not the state, the nation, or public, as you can see on the other side here. It's private ownership. Profits go to that owner. The incentive is to work for yourself, which obviously ties in closely to entrepreneurship, right? We're talking about starting your own business, working for yourself. So the idea of capitalism is that hard work's rewarded by more money. So, or higher positions, that you move up in a company or the company that you own earns more money. That's the idea. The competition, the hard work means more money. And the pay is whatever you can earn. So again, that ties into what we've been talking about with an entrepreneur, benefits of being an entrepreneur, right? Your pay is not dictated by someone else. True capitalist economy, the pay is whatever you can earn. Now, on the other hand, we have socialism, principles of which are outlined by Karl Marx, was an 1800s German philosopher. And for socialism, you can see it's the exact opposite of capitalism. Government involvement, total government involvement in the economy in regard to how those questions are used, what goods and services are produced, how they're produced, for whom they're produced, and who owns and controls all the factors of production. The government. All right, so the answers to those questions are very different for socialism than capitalism. Ownership is public, the state, the nation, as opposed to private. Profits go to all. Okay, they're distributed to all, and the incentive is to work for everyone. So whereas capitalism really encourages competition, socialism really encourages cooperation. The goal is for the betterment of society, not for individual gain or advancement. And then the pay is whatever you need, as opposed to whatever you can earn. All right, so I have here a reality check because we had those two extremes, right? Capitalism or socialism. In reality, most economies are a mixture of the two. They're not purely capitalist or purely socialist, although most countries or regions are more strongly one or the other, and you'll hear them referred to that way. So here's a couple of examples, and these countries might have come to mind when we were talking about the two types of economic systems. So first one, United States, right? Capitalist economy, often referred to as a free market economy, free enterprise, capitalist. However, so the United States definitely leans more towards a capitalist economy. However, in reality, it's a mixture because, for example, we have socialism traits within how our economy runs. One example is Social Security. So the program where everyone pays a specific tax that goes to the government, and it distributes it to those who are a certain age who are not able to work and earn income on their own. That's definitely a program that is socialist as opposed to a capitalist program, but it's operating within this economic system where we say the United States is a capitalist economy. Okay, so in reality, it's a mixture, even though it's often thought of as a capitalist economy. Sweden, on the other hand, often thought of as a socialist economy because of its high taxes, because of how healthcare works in Sweden for everybody as opposed to for individuals paying for it. And so Sweden's often looked at as a socialist economy. However, in Sweden, the majority of industry is privately owned as opposed to government owned. So remember, on ownership, capitalism is privately owned, whereas socialism, it's publicly owned by the nation or the state or the government. But that's not true in Sweden. So that's a capitalist trait, feature that's being used within that economic system that's generally thought of as a socialist economy. All right, so let's go over some more traits of capitalism in a little bit more detail, since that is the economy that the U.S. definitely leans more strongly towards, and it ties right into entrepreneurship. All right, so capitalism, an economic system, right? We've talked about capitalism and socialism, in which businesses can be privately owned and operated. So this is key. Individuals can own businesses, they can own different assets, houses, equipment, land. So individuals can own these things as opposed to only the government. All right, so key characteristic of capitalism is also called free enterprise or free market. So make sure that you don't get tripped up when those are used interchangeably regularly. And then finally, it's based on voluntary exchange. So think about this. I can decide if I have enough income and if my situation's right, whereas I can afford to pay someone to mow my yard. I can willingly choose to do that, right? And I can pay a landscaping or other company to mow my lawn for me, and that's going to be a voluntary exchange. So I pay them for the service, and it's voluntary. It's no one telling me I have to do that. I could change my mind and decide I don't want to pay anybody to mow my yard. I'm going to do it myself, and nobody's going to make me pay someone to mow my yard. Okay, so that's, if you think about how our markets typically work, it's based on voluntary exchange. The idea is that it encourages competition between entrepreneurs specifically. So it encourages that competitive nature, people always having to get better, the best companies should come out on top. And and more companies should be springing up regularly because people are motivated to work hard. The idea being the harder they work, the more money they get. So that's the idea. Free market forces primarily determine prices. So if Wade Radina, the owner of the Radinas around town here in the College of Business, if he decides he wants to charge $10 for his mochas, his single mochas, he can do that. However, I doubt he will sell as many mochas if he does that, because very similar mocha drinks at Starbucks or at Blue Stem, some of the competitors, it's more around the $3 range, which is what his mochas are currently. So more similar in price because of these free market, these competitive forces primarily determining prices. Now, he can charge $10 if he wants, because it's a free market, right? So the government's not going to tell him how much he has to price his mochas at. All right, and then finally, private wealth and property ownership, which we've covered a lot already, but these are key characteristics of voluntary exchange, which is key to capitalism as well. Now, remember, I mentioned already one program, socialist type program, and you might be thinking, yeah, but sometimes the government in certain industries does determine the price, and that is true, but primarily capitalist economy and primarily free market forces determine prices. So you'll want to make sure that you remember that. All right, so because we have a capitalist economy, we can have entrepreneurship. We study entrepreneurship. We encourage it because of this competitive nature of capitalism. And if you think about it, it's kind of how we really operate in our society. We have competitions. We're taught to have a competitive advantage, to look at other businesses. I mean, this is the basis of a lot of what we study and how to get ahead and succeed in business. All right, so what do I want you to do? So we're going to get more into this capitalism issue because I want you to think about it. You all probably have your own opinions about capitalism just right now, maybe based on your political affiliation or just even me going over these, what you identify more with. But I want you to think about it from the entrepreneurial perspective. So I have assigned for Friday. Now, I can't make you read this, but I can tell you that it'll take you like 2 minutes to read this article, and I hope you will read it. I have the link here, but I don't think it'll be easy for you to click on. So also in the announcements in Canvas and Yellow Dig, that's an app in Canvas that we're going to use later in the semester to talk about current events and things. So it's also in there. A really short article. I want you to read it before class on Friday so that we can have a richer discussion about capitalism, about this specific situation, and some viewpoints I want to make sure that you have when you're reading this article and as you're thinking about it before class. The small business owner, how they would feel about this specific situation described in this article, how maybe a large corporation executive would feel about it, how a free market economist, remember free market capitalism, advocate would feel about it, someone who's a government intervention advocate or more towards the socialist principles, how they would feel about this situation and their opinion on what's going on in this article, and then finally consumers in general, what their viewpoint would be. And I'm going to challenge you on Friday with the class activity to really think about those in more depth. So here are reminders of what you all have going on. Make sure that you don't miss these, some easy points. I hope you enjoyed Dr. Jackson's lecture about opportunity recognition on Monday. So don't forget about those participation points. You get 2 attempts at that quiz in Canvas. The syllabus quiz is due Friday. So coming up soon, the Entrepreneur Assessment Discussion Board post that you all are working on, and then the Executive Summary Business Plan, you need to contact me by September 3rd. And September 3rd is Labor Day. We won't have class, but you do have a couple deadlines coming up on that day. All right, well, I hope this helps, and I will see you all soon.